Good morning, afternoon, or evening, folks, and welcome to Cast of All Trades, the show where we talk about developing skills, exploring ideas, and following curiosity. I'm your host, Orion Siebert. In this episode, I talk about boredom. Why do we feel bored? How has boredom changed throughout human history? How can we use boredom to our advantage? And much more. This episode was particularly strange for me to do, and one that I've been waffling on for months now. The idea that boredom can be a blessing in disguise is one that I've considered for many years, but haven't found the proper way to explain it. Hopefully, this episode will finally help me crystallize and express my thoughts of boredom effectively. For more episodes like this, where I discuss tools and tactics that can be used to make the most of what your brain is giving you, make sure to subscribe to the show and let me know in the comments what you'd like to hear more about, and I might just choose your topic for the next episode. I believe that about covers it. So, without further ado, let's talk a bit about boredom. What is boredom? Simply put, the best definition I could find or come up with for boredom is that boredom is a state of being when you have nothing pressing to do and nothing demanding your attention. It's simply a state of just existing and almost a lack of, perhaps it's more of a lack of novelty, a lack of stimulus, something like that, something along those lines. To properly define boredom, perhaps it's easier to look at it from a lens of why do we feel bored to begin with? There's a couple theories behind the purpose of boredom and why we feel bored at all. One that I'm partial to is that boredom is meant to be a sort of motivating force for humanity to explore new ideas, where we only feel bored when you aren't pressured to really do anything important. You don't really feel bored when you're struggling to survive, when you desperately need food or you desperately need something to work. During that situation, your brain is in a hyper excited state of emotion, where you feel stress, you feel anxiety, you feel pressure, you feel something pushing you, driving you to go out and do something. Compare that to when you have everything taken care of for you. You just lie back on the couch, you don't have to do anything, you can call a random person and they'll come deliver food to your door. You can call another random person, they'll deliver you clothes, they'll deliver you games, they'll deliver you whatever you want at the click of a button. And all of that, surprisingly, leads to us being more bored, because we don't have anything pressing. We don't have anything demanding our attention that really is crucial for our survival. That's one of my theories about why we feel bored. When the pressure's off and you don't have anything that you really need to do, that's the only times that I've noticed that I feel bored. Perhaps you'll feel bored at work as well, but there's another theory behind why we might feel bored there. We might also feel bored when we have a lack of novel stimulus. This doesn't mean that you need constantly new information. It just means that we need regularly different information or regularly different stimulus. So say you're looking at a screen all day for work, and you're just looking at spreadsheet after spreadsheet after spreadsheet. Of course you're going to feel bored, for the most part, unless you're a spreadsheet junkie like me. But for this case in particular, assuming that you aren't a spreadsheet junkie, looking at spreadsheet after spreadsheet after spreadsheet, you're going to feel bored, because that information means nothing to you for the most part. You see a bunch of cells, you see a bunch of numbers, you see a bunch of words there. It's kind of meaningless. It's stimulation. It's probably not novel stimulation. It's not new. It's not exciting. It's not interesting. It doesn't trigger points in your brain to say, ooh, this is important. I should look at this. Instead, it's telling your brain, okay, this isn't important. Let's go, like you're bored, go do something else. And that's the other key important thing for boredom. Another reason why we feel bored is that we feel bored when our brains perceive the things that we're doing now as pointless or not important, that we should be doing something else. Back to the spreadsheet example, you're looking at spreadsheets that are pointless, they mean nothing to you. So what do? You typically pull out your phone because you think, oh, well, perhaps you don't captively or actively think of this, but you think subconsciously, these spreadsheets are boring, I'm going to pull out my phone because this is more interesting, because there is more novel information here, there's more useful information here. Those are some of the main theories behind why we feel boredom. It's mostly that we don't have new, novel information. Perhaps we aren't struggling to survive. We don't have anything pressuring us. We don't have anything we need to do. It's just we exist. We want something new. Our brains are telling us, this thing that you're doing is pointless. It's meaningless. There's nothing that you need to worry about here. Instead, let's go find something that we can actively engage in. But how does this compare from boredom in antiquity versus today? Most of the examples I've been talking about are examples from today. What about examples in antiquity? Well, the thing is, boredom in antiquity, or more ancient times, is that it was seen more of as a good thing, instead of today where we see boredom as a bad thing, a symptom, something that we need to sedate, something that we need to push down to say, ooh, boredom, that's a bad thing. I better go seek something out to quench this boredom. In antiquity, boredom was actually a pretty good sign. If you're bored, that meant that you were in a privileged position. You didn't have to worry about food. You didn't have to worry about safety. There's nothing you really had to worry about. Sure, there might be some minor stresses here and there, but all in all, you didn't have to worry about something. That was a good thing. It was a sense of relief, relaxation, a time where you can say, ah, okay, I don't have to worry about this. Now I can go and work on something more interesting. I can work on developing something to make my life easier. Boredom was a chance in antiquity for us to say, awesome, my basic needs are met. Now I can work on improving my quality of life to be better now and in the future. Compare that to today, where everything, our basic needs are almost always taken care of. We have running water, we have clean food, we have clean water, we have a roof over our heads. Sure, we might have problems here and there with governments or economic situations, but all in all, we still feel boredom. We feel boredom much more frequently than those who did in antiquity, because our lives are so much easier. However, how most of us treat this boredom is totally different than how we used to in antiquity. Today, as I mentioned previously, we see boredom as a bad thing, something that we need to avoid at all costs. Our brains treat it as some sort of horrible virus that the second that you feel bored, you instantly jump to your phone, you instantly jump to your computer, turn on the TV, go and do something so that you can quiet the voice in your head to say, shh, shh, you're okay, you don't have to think, you don't have to worry about it. Here's a distracting thing so you don't have to think, so you don't have to worry for yourself about any of these other things. Distraction, distraction, distraction. Instead of taking the opportunity to go and try to better our lives, to improve our quality of life. Instead, we see boredom as a bad thing, something that needs to be cured, something that needs to be sedated. So digging into that a bit more, how do we deal with boredom today? Instead of us going out and solving problems and trying to improve the lives of ourselves and our families, what is it that we do today? The first thing that comes to mind is social media. Scrolling through TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, etc. Everyone has their social media poison of choice. For me, it's probably scrolling through YouTube every once in a while. It's not great, it's not bad, but it's something. Social media is designed to be captivating, designed to capture our attention, to sort of push the boredom away, to say, hey, look, here's new novel information all the time. Interesting, new stuff, flashy colors, look at this. It's designed to keep you engaged. So that it's designed in such a way to say, you're bored? Wonderful, come here, we will distract you so you don't have to think about your boredom. And it's easy, it's quick and easy. The phones in our pockets allow us to quickly turn to these devices to quench whatever boredom, thirst we might have. Next is games. Compared to social media, games are much more of a double-edged sword. Yes, you can get many benefits from playing games, whether they're video games, card games, any other type of game. You can get some social interaction from it. You can develop your hand-eye coordination. You can enjoy some wonderful stories that help you throughout the day or inspire you to come up with new ideas. And while there are certainly worse ways to deal with boredom, to an extreme, games can be very detrimental to one's health and personal development in many skill aspects. Perhaps all of your interactions are done through games. Your social skills are probably going to be lacking. Just one example. That said, games are a wonderful thing. I love them. I love playing games, but they are certainly in the top contenders for best ways to cure boredom or to dissuade yourself from feeling boredom. Next, in a very similar vein, is television and movies. Similar to games, but debatably worse for you because shows and movies require much less interaction between the user and the medium, where games typically require the user to contribute to the game, to actively participate in it, to become a player in the story, in the environment, or whatever. Much more engaging than a movie or a show, where you typically just have to sit back, watch, maybe you'll talk about it with some friends later, but generally, television and movies is a mindless activity for most people, and just a way to whittle the hours away. Next, what I want to touch on is snacking, eating, drinking, substance use, basically anything that is quenching the thirst for the physical body of sorts, is the best way I can put it, where a surprising amount of the time, human beings, when we are mentally bored, we will turn to physical things to essentially alleviate that boredom. We'll turn to food, where we can get some novel taste experience where we'll say, oh, I'm bored. I'm going to go check the fridge, or I'm going to go check the snack cupboard. It seems, talking about it out loud, it seems totally illogical. Why would you go eat snacks when you're not hungry and your brain just says, I'm bored, I need new experience? Why would you go get a snack, or why would you go grab a soda? It doesn't make logical sense, but emotionally, when you look at how the brain responds to it, it does make a lot of sense. Whenever we consume these snacks, whenever we consume these carbonated drinks or whatever you want to drink, whether that be alcohol, soda, whatever, instantly our brains are going to start lighting up from, ooh, this is an interesting sensation. This is different from what I've been feeling for the past 20 minutes. So even if it's not necessarily new or novel, it's different in the case of what has your brain been feeling over the past 20 minutes or so. The key to curing boredom in this case is that your brain is always looking for something new, something different, something to engage with. So the various tastes, the various textures, whatever we can get from feeding our body, snacks, drinks, substances, whatever, especially when you're looking at more illegal or illicit substances or stuff that's designed to inhibit your brain, that can definitely lead to alleviating your boredom to an extent. But that said, these also tend to lead to types of addictions that will most certainly detract from a healthy, good lifestyle altogether. Next, another one kind of similar to snacking, eating, drinking, and other substance use is shopping, where, again, logically, it doesn't make sense. Why would you go shopping to alleviate your boredom? But when looked at it through a psychological and biological lens of sorts, it does make sense. Shopping provides new forms of novelty. You go out, you find a thing that's like, ooh, if I buy this thing, it's going to cure my boredom for a little bit. It's going to give me a spike of dopamine to say, guess what? You got this cool new thing, this cool new shiny object. And you'll feel great for a little bit, but then later on you'll realize, why did I buy that thing? It's totally useless. I didn't really want it. It just satisfies a temporary craving. And that's what shopping really does for us. It mostly leads us to buy things that we don't really need, or want in particular, just because it satisfies a temporary craving for a little bit. That's how we end up with a bunch of crap that ultimately we just end up selling again, putting on Facebook Marketplace, or we start hoarding to say, oh, I bought that thing, I feel like I have to keep it now. And it's dumb. But companies will take advantage of that with their marketing, so it's a interesting way that simultaneously they're preaching that buy this thing, it's going to cure your boredom and make your life so much better, even though it's kind of just a hunk of junk that you might find interest in for the first day or two, but after that, you're going to feel bored again. Then you're going to go look for the new, fanciest widget to distract you for a while. All that to say, shopping, interesting thing that a surprising amount of people use to satiate their boredom, but it will ultimately lead to them buying things that they don't really want or need just to satisfy that temporary craving of, I need something new in my life. But ultimately, to sum up all of these things of social media, games, television, snacking, eating, drinking, substance use, shopping, these are all distractions. These are all quick dopamine hits. These are things that you can do really quickly, really easily. The access to them, the threshold to get to these things is so low. And the mental reward is so high. Because it hijacks a system in our brains, the dopamine receptor system, where that system was originally designed as a sort of reward system of sorts, where we would go out, we would hunt, we would forage, we would do something good, and we would get food, we would get berries, we would find these wonderful things that were important for our survival, and that would reward us. Our brains would say, hey, you found a thing important to your survival. Here's a hit of dopamine, you're going to feel great, and you're going to feel inspired to go and do the thing again. That's sort of been hijacked today, because we don't necessarily need to go hunting, fishing, foraging to get the things that we need to survive. Now that dopamine system is being taken advantage of, so that whenever we feel bored, we can go out and we can do these low effort, easy, high dopamine things. We get that dopamine hit, we feel great for a bit, but then ultimately that dopamine hit has to fall. We adjust to our new level of satisfaction. We have to get more. We have to try more. We have to watch more TV. We have to scroll social media more. We have to play more games. We have to buy more stuff. We have to eat more. We have to drink more. We have to just do more, 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 more. And ultimately, our brains will adjust. We have to keep on doing more. It's an endless consumption lifestyle, generally spawned on by this whole concept of boredom. So, how can we more intentionally practice boredom? I want to talk about practicing boredom first. Then, after that, I want to talk about how we can use boredom to our advantage, how we can really look at boredom as a blessing and not just as some sort of curse, something that we need to avoid forever. I want to talk about some of my tools and tactics I've used to more actively practice boredom. To one, just get better at sitting with it, to get used to being with your own head, but also as just a way to perhaps derive some of the other benefits that you might see later on when I talk about how we can use boredom to our advantage. The first tactic that I want to recommend for being able to practice boredom is one that I call travel time. When riding on a road trip or flying long distances, try to set aside some boredom time. This is something that a lot of people actively say, why would you do that? Why would you want to do that? You're just sitting, you're doing nothing. You're flying across the ocean and you're just going to sit there. You're just going to stare at the back of the headrest. You're going to sit in the car for a while. You're not even going to download movies or download music or just do anything. You're just going to sit there, and it amazes them. But you can do that, and it works out surprisingly well what you can get done in that time just sitting in your own head. In particular, a good example of this for me was on occasion when I'm flying, most notably when I flew from Frankfurt, Germany back to Minneapolis, Minnesota. The entire flight, I was sitting in my head for about 8 to 9 hours, and it was very relaxing. For a while, there were moments of like an incessant feeling of I have to do something, I have to find something interesting to do, I have to find some novel experience. But then after a while, that died down, and I was able to start working some things out in my head. I was able to be more introspective, to think about things that I wanted to figure out, to think about values, philosophy, psychology, all these interesting ideas that I just I wasn't actively taking the time to think about before. It was this wonderful, uninterrupted block of time that I had nothing else I had to do, and it was great. So if you can find time while you're traveling, whether that be for a road trip or a long flight, or hey, while you're driving to the office or first thing in the morning and driving home in the evening, don't turn on the radio, don't turn on your music, don't turn things on, just enjoy the ride. Just ride and think. You'd be amazed what ideas come into your head, what that boredom can do for you during that time. Next is doing a daily meditation of sorts. It's similar to the travel time where you have an uninterrupted block of time to just sit and think, to just sit with yourself, to be bored for a while. This is time set aside each day to just sit quietly with your thoughts, even if it's as little as 1 minute a day. Just get used to the discomfort. For a lot of people, it's not going to be easy to just go straight to the road trip or go straight to the flight because that's a long time. You probably don't want to start off with 1 hour, 2 hours, 8 or 9 hours. You probably just want to start off with a couple minutes. Just get used to being able to sit with yourself, because today it amazes me how few people are able to actually sit in a room quietly by themselves with no stimulus, with nothing around them. Just sit and think for a while. It utterly amazes me. So to get used to this, start with as little as a minute. Then maybe the next day do 2 minutes, then 3, then 4, then 5. Just get used to the discomfort and slowly increase that time. And you'll start to see that your life is much more relaxing, much more introspective. You're able to problem solve easier, and generally life just feels a bit better. Slower pace, you can actually enjoy it for a while instead of rushing to the next thing. Even better, for daily meditation, instead of just sitting and being with your thoughts, perhaps sit down with a timer, a pen, and a notebook. Turn on the timer, set it to the side, don't even look at it. Then from there, just write out whatever comes to mind, even if it's, I feel so uncomfortable doing this right now. Just keep on writing, don't look back while you're writing, while the timer's going, just write. It's a good way to work out the thoughts in your head and just put them on paper. Then at the end, go back through and just start reading it of, what was I thinking about during that time? This is entirely for you. Just sit with you and the paper. It's a way to start to get ideas from your head out onto paper so you're not totally bottled up in your head. Some people that works a bit better. For me, I find a sort of a 50-50 split of Sometimes it's great for me to just be in my head for a while, to just close my eyes and just wander. Other times, I really do need to just sit down with a pencil and paper and just take notes and just write and write and write. Either way, you're going to be able to derive some amazing benefits from it. The last way that I want to talk about being able to more intentionally practice boredom is to simplify life. Multitask less over menial things. It seems simple, but when you look at how often we multitask in our daily lives, it's amazing how we're actually able to get anything done. For example, maybe don't watch TV or scroll social media over a meal. Admittedly, I'm one who does this a lot. I watch a lot of anime and a lot of YouTube while I'm eating breakfast or dinner or something. Something that I should probably do less. Then a lot of people take their phones to the bathroom with them. Do you really need to scroll TikTok while you're sitting on the toilet? No, not really. Or another one that I personally really enjoy, is don't put on your headphones when you go for a walk. There's a regular walk around here I like to do. It's good, like 40-minute walk the whole time. Sometimes I'll listen to an audiobook, sometimes I'll listen to a podcast. Other times I'll just leave my headphones at home and just go for a walk around the lake, just think to myself the entire time. And it's great. Just you and your head. But those are just some simple ideas. For the most part, the best way that you can start to implement this is to look at your life, look for the common sources of dopamine, and start to dial it back a little bit. Just try to be more intentional about when you use things. This isn't to say to totally cut out social media, to totally cut out television or games or drinking and eating or whatever. Don't cut it all out. Certainly cut back a little bit, but you don't need to get rid of everything. Yes, we need some time to be able to relax. Sometimes we really do need that mindless TV time. Other times, though, just be more intentional about how you use these things. Because if you endlessly, mindlessly consume, that's going to be more detrimental to you than if you take the time to say, I'm intentionally going to consume this thing. I'm going to watch this movie, then I'm going to go do something else. Instead of just saying, I'm going to sit on the couch and watch whatever comes up all night. So with all that said, finally, I'm going to get to how can we use boredom to get ahead, to be more productive, to our advantage. Starting off with something I'm always going to advocate, and that is pursuing hobbies and skills. In particular, these are going to be pursuing hobbies and skills that will earn you more money or get you back more time. When you're feeling bored, instead of going and scrolling social media, that's a sign for you to say, wait a second, I'm not pressured to do anything right now. If I'm not pressured to do anything right now, maybe I should go do something that could potentially help me out in the future. Use boredom like we used to in antiquity. In antiquity, when people got bored, they went and they worked on carriage. They went and worked on a side hustle. They went and did things that would earn them a higher quality of life, not just for them, but for their families. So instead of scrolling social media for a while longer, consider picking up a side hustle. Consider going and pursuing a hobby that you find interesting or a skill that will get you back more time in the future. Something that will improve you professionally, something that will say, guess what? Even in my free time, I'm able to do stuff that improves me physically, professionally, emotionally, whatever. Just something that can get you back more time. And in a similar vein to that, go and learn something new. Instead of doing the stuff that you're familiar with, why not go out and really get some new novelty? If you've always wanted to learn how to dance, great, go do a dance class or go pull up some YouTube videos on how to do ballroom dancing. Start doing some ballroom dancing. It's surprisingly simple. When we're bored, we almost always fall to the easiest or lowest common denominator of whatever we feel most comfortable doing. Instead, why not just step out of your comfort zone? That boredom can be a great motivator for you to say, I have the opportunity right now to go and do whatever I want. So why don't I go and do something more fun, more interesting, instead of the same things that I do every other night? Next is, instead of satisfying your appetite with computers, use that boredom to drive you to do more of what you really want to do, to write the book that you've always wanted to write, to make the thing, to go and do other stuff. This is all basically under the same topic of pursuing hobbies and skills, learn something new, satisfy your appetite with writing and creating and doing stuff. Boredom is us not having pressure. I've said this a number of times now. When you're not under pressure, you're able to be much more productive. You're able to create the work that you really want to do. You're able to create and do the things that you've always wanted to do, that you keep on saying, I'm going to do that one day. Why don't you do that today? So, aside from that, what else can you do for boredom to be more productive with it? You can use boredom as an opportunity to sit with yourself. There's a quote that summarizes this quite well, that your mind is the greatest prison you'll ever live in, so you may as well learn to enjoy it. Most people that I know cannot sit in a room quietly with themselves for more than 5 minutes. There's actually a study, if I remember correctly, where they took men and women and they put them in a room, and all they had in that room was a chair, a table, and a button. And if they pushed that button, they would get an electric shock. And they were tasked with sitting in that room for 30 minutes, something like that, for a certain amount of time. And the experiment was to see how long can people go in a room just sitting by themselves, or will they actively push the shock button to get some sort of stimulus. And wouldn't you guess it, people cannot sit in a room by themselves without stimulus. Most of them, within the first 2-3 minutes, hit the button to shock themselves, and they would do it a couple more times throughout the remainder of the experiment, because they couldn't just sit in their own head. They weren't able to think things through. They weren't able to just be alone with themselves. It seems that most people today are scared to really confront their own values. They're scared to see, who am I really? They're scared to think about that, because that requires nuanced thought. That requires them to be uncomfortable. That requires them to face them for who they really are. And it's not something that most people are willing to do. But if you are able to do that, then guess what? You've just been able to conquer something that most people haven't been able to do. And once you do that, you'll come to realize that wasn't as bad as you once thought it was. You'll actually start to find it enjoyable, being able to just sit with yourself, to play with ideas, to think, what do I think about this hypothetical situation? What do I think about these values, these beliefs, these things that I've been raised on my entire life? What do I think about this or that? Or what about this problem I'm trying to solve? How do I solve that? That's the next thing I wanted to touch on, is that problem solving. When you're bored, that's the perfect time to try problem solving. For me, I like to always try to have some sort of problem, some sort of project, something to work on, so that when I'm bored, your brain tends to wander a bit more. It tends to loosely connect ideas here and there, and then suddenly, bam, you'll get something. You'll get a solution. You'll find an idea that, oh, holy crap, that solves a problem that I've been thinking about for the longest time. When you're bored, that's probably one of the best times that you can use to let your brain wander and solve ideas. Since our mind actively seeks out novel experiences, when we have a problem, that's the greatest of novel experiences our brain can possibly find. It's I have a thing that I need to work on, that I need to solve, or that I want to solve. Now this is the perfect time for me to do it, because I don't have the pressure that I need to solve it. I don't have the pressure to hunt, to fish, to do anything to help me really survive. But if I have this problem, then I can focus on that. I can train my brain to actively seek it out, to try to solve it. And then once you get rewarded for that, guess what? Then you can move on to the next problem, and the next one, and the next one. There's always more problems that you can try to solve. Again, you can go back to what boredom was like in antiquity. When you had boredom in antiquity, you were free. You had time to do things. You were able to work on stuff. You were able to improve the quality of life for yourself and your family. So why not continue to use it that way? The key thing that I really want to touch on here is, if you want to use boredom to get ahead, to be more productive, the key thing is to find valuable tasks, to find novel experiences, stuff to keep your mind focused on. In summary, boredom is when your mind craves novelty. It's a driving force that pushes humanity to innovate and to be creative. Over time, boredom has shifted from a sign of wealth and opulence to a sign that something's horribly wrong, that you have to take drugs or do whatever to cure it. Today, we treat boredom as a problem that we need to solve, a symptom to be suppressed, and not like the blessing that it probably really is. When used properly, boredom can drive us to great heights that we could have never imagined. That's not to say that we always need to make boredom productive. Sometimes the right thing to do is just sit back on the couch and watch some mindless television. But for those of us who want to make the most of what their minds have given them, intentional boredom practices and the tactics I presented here can certainly help. But what do you think? Is boredom something that we should suppress, or is it the blessing I claim it to be? What are your preferred ways to suppress your boredom? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this episode, then please share with a friend you think would like it, or share it on social media. It would absolutely mean the world to me, and it helps the podcast grow so much. With all that said, thanks for listening. I greatly appreciate it, and I'll talk to you all later. Ciao.